The Central Park was Daniel Carter's sanctuary. He often sat on the same worn bench under the shade of tall elm trees. He tilted his head up to the sky, listening to the symphony of American robins and the innocent laughter of children. His hand clutched the leather leash of Milo, his unwaveringly loyal German shepherd, who was more than just a companion. He was Daniel's eyes and protector after the car accident that took his sight away 2 years ago. Despite the calm surroundings, Milo was restless. His ears twitched at every sound, his sharp eyes scanning the park as if anticipating trouble across the park. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound broke the fresh air in the park. Hudson Collins slammed on the brakes of his big bike, surrounded by a small group of men on different colored big bikes, dressed in leather with massive bodies, shaved heads, and tattoos covering their skin. Hudson noticed Daniel sitting quietly with Milo beside him. There was something about his calm, peaceful demeanor, combined with the dog's discipline. Very different from other dogs that would get scared when they heard the sound of a big motorbike's exhaust, Hudson thought. He was about to have a new game. He flicked his cigarette to the ground. Hudson smirked, zipping up his old black leather jacket. He stepped off his big bike, while his friends chuckled behind him. Hudson's heavy boots thudded against the pavement as he crossed the park, heading straight for Daniel. Milo noticed him first. The dog's ears perked up, his body stiffening as a low growl rumbled from his chest. Daniel could feel the tension in the leash and tilt Milo her head toward the sound of the approaching footsteps. Hudson blew cigarette smoke into the dog's face. "Hey," he said mockingly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Good dog. Can you smoke if you don't know? Put on a circus show for us." Daniel tightened his grip on Milos, leash his heartbeat quickening. He couldn't see the man, but he could hear the malice in his voice. "Leave us alone," he said firmly, him tone masking the fear bubbling inside him. But Hudson didn't back off instead. He clapped his hands loudly, trying to provoke Milo. The dog remained steady, his piercing gaze locked on Hudson, though his growl deepened. "Oh, tough guy, huh?" Hudson taunted, taking another step closer. At this point, a few curious people had begun to linger nearby, unsure whether they should intervene or not. Hudson decided to up the ante. He raised his paw as if to kick Milo. The sheepdog's growl exploded into a deep warning, and Daniel cried out, "Don't you dare." What Hudson didn't know was that Milo wasn't just any dog before becoming Daniel's guide. Milo had been a K-9 military service dog, trained for high-risk missions and capable of taking down threats far greater than this man. As Hudson's foot drew closer, the moment seemed to stretch into slow motion. Milo's instincts from years of combat training surged to the surface, his muscles tensed, and his focused gaze never wavered from the invader. The park fell silent, the air heavy with tension, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Hudson's laughter echoed throughout the park as he raised his foot higher, clearly enjoying the tension he was creating. "Come on, show me what you got." He smirked. Daniel's fingers tightened, his knuckles turning white. He couldn't see the scene unfolding, but the energy in the air was like a threatening electric current. Yet, Milo remained completely still, his body stiff as a coiled spring, ready to react not out of aggression, but out of disciplined defense. In that split second, the crowd bristles with anxiety. Some bystanders gasp, covering their mouths, while others call out for someone to intervene. Daniel, enveloped in a surge of panic, grips Milo's leash tightly, his brain torn between fear for his beloved companion and the knowledge that Milo can handle danger better than any dog he's ever known. The park, once a sanctuary, has become a stage for a troubling confrontation that no one ever expected to witness here. Milo's reaction comes with an almost practiced composure. As Hudson's foot moves in his direction, Milo steps sideways and positions himself squarely between Daniel and the biker, measuring his response with near-clinical precision. No frantic barking, no uncontrolled lunging, just a cold, calculated readiness typical of a disciplined K9. It's an awe-inspiring show of poise, and to bystanders capturing the scene on their phones, it is both shocking and fascinating to witness a dog so impeccably trained. Hudson, thrown off balance by his failed attempt, stumbles slightly, but doesn't back down. His ego, wounded by the dog's unaffected response, flares up in anger. Milo remains absolutely still, tail lowered but tense, gaze fixed on the aggressor. Even though Daniel can't see, he senses the shift in Milo's posture through the pressure on the leash, a gentle but firm weight that signals the dog is fully in protection mode. A hush falls over the area as people watch intently, some already dialing 911. Children are ushered away by concerned parents, while joggers stop to see what might happen next. The wind rustles the trees overhead, scattering leaves across the park's walkway, and the tension in the air is so thick it's nearly palpable. In that moment, it feels as though the entire park holds its breath, braced for the next escalation. The intensity of the confrontation draws a modest crowd, some of whom record the events from multiple angles on their smartphones. Concerned murmurs ripple through the onlookers as they realize the seriousness of the situation. A person with a disability is being harassed, and a highly trained service dog is valiantly standing guard. Daniel, voice quavering but resolute, appeals to Hudson one more time. "Please, stop. I'm asking you, leave us alone." For a brief moment, Hudson seems to hesitate, taking in the small group surrounding them. Their gazes silently communicate disapproval, moral outrage, or outright fear. Yet, as the tension hangs in the air, it becomes evident that Hudson's pride won't allow him to walk away so easily. The muffled hum of city sounds in the distance contrasts sharply with the focal commotion here in the park. Milo keeps his body angled protectively, ensuring that no one can get close to Daniel without facing him first. In the crowd, worried whispers spread. Is that dog going to attack? Where's security? That poor man. Daniel's heart pounds. He silently prays that the situation will resolve without anyone getting hurt, especially Milo, who has already saved his life in countless subtle ways. Hudson, determined not to appear weak in front of his cohorts, continues his belligerent stance. He raises his voice, shouting insults not just at Daniel, but at the bystanders who dare to film him. Milo, as if following an invisible script from his military training, remains focused, never taking his eyes off Hudson's every move. Daniel, desperation growing, tries to reason with Hudson, imploring him to walk away. But Hudson's aggression peaks. He moves in, gesturing wildly, as though he might lash out at any moment. Then, faster than anyone expects, Milo steps sideways to intercept, giving a fierce bark, an unmistakable warning that he will act if forced to. The crowd collectively recoils, some stepping further back, while a few bold onlookers edge closer, ready to intervene if necessary. Hudson's confidence falters under Milo's commanding presence. Even so, he refuses to fully retreat, meeting the dog's unwavering stare with a mix of anger and fear. From a distance, the scene looks like a tightly coiled standoff. A large, muscular man brimming with hostility, a blind man visibly shaken, but standing tall beside his canine protector, and a small crowd torn between concern and curiosity. In the center of it all, Milo stands as a testament to training, courage, and loyalty, prepared to defend Daniel no matter the cost. Stop right there. Your actions are illegal and against human morality. The voice of a determined-looking female park manager who had witnessed enough from afar to know that immediate intervention was needed. She strides toward Hudson with an air of authority, her uniform lending credibility to her stern approach. She wastes no time in chastising him, voice firm and resonating with disapproval. "Threatening a service dog is illegal," she declares, pointing out that Milo is performing a vital job for Daniel. Her words slice through the tension like a blade, momentarily startling Hudson and his group. While Hudson may not respect many forms of authority, the legal ramifications of harming a guide dog give him pause. The crowd, relieved to see a figure of official power, begins to lower their phones, anticipating that calm will finally be restored. Daniel exhales, almost dizzy with relief, but remains on edge, unsure if Hudson will comply. Milo's posture loosens just a fraction, though he continues to track Hudson with unwavering focus. The park manager calls for other staff to keep an eye on the group, emphasizing that any further aggression will be met with legal consequences. In that moment, Daniel finally believes the confrontation may come to an end. "That dog is not easy to bully," an old man's voice came from behind, before his gaze turned to Milo with a sense of familiarity. "I recognize that dog," he mutters softly, catching Daniel's attention. The older man recounts how he once worked on a military base where German shepherds were trained for high-stakes missions. He distinctly recalls Milo's intense focus and controlled demeanor from years back. Daniel listens, surprise evident in his expression. Though he knew Milo had some service background, he was never fully aware of the dog's extensive military training. He had only been told that Milo excelled in guiding tasks and specialized maneuvers. The older man's story reveals that Milo was among the top tier of K-9 units, capable of sniffing out explosives, apprehending suspects, and protecting soldiers in war zones. The onlookers exchange astonished glances, some more intrigued now than frightened. Even the park manager raises an eyebrow, recognizing the gravity of the older man's words. As for Hudson, he stands there with a sour expression, arms crossed over his chest, momentarily overshadowed by the unfolding revelation. Despite the lingering threat, Daniel can't help feeling a warm surge of pride and gratitude for the extraordinary dog who has become his lifesaver and closest companion. Daniel looks down at Milo. He recognizes that Milo isn't just serving him out of obligation, but out of a sense of loyalty forged over years of high-stakes military work. Seething with embarrassment and reluctant to continue being the center of negative attention, Hudson finally relents. The park manager's unwavering reprimand, coupled with the group's scornful stares and the knowledge of Milo's formidable past, compels him to back away. Although fury still simmers in his eyes, he chooses to storm off rather than engage further. He throws up his hands in exasperation and spits insults under his breath, making a show of his retreat. Daniel can't help but breathe a shaky sigh of relief. Milo, still alert, watches Hudson's every step, ensuring he moves a safe distance away. As the tension abates, the park manager reiterates to Hudson that harassment of a guide dog is punishable by law, a final warning that resonates among the crowd. The gathered bystanders slowly disperse, some offering Daniel supportive nods or reassuring pats on the shoulder before they go. Daniel feels a profound sense of gratitude. Not only did Milo protect him from immediate physical harm, but the confrontation also brought to light the depth of Milo's character and background. Walking away from that scene, Daniel is left with a mix of relief and vigilance, well aware that Hudson's wounded pride might not let this story end here. Daniel returns to his modest apartment, located in a relatively quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Hawthorne. Yet the unsettling events from the park continue to play in his mind like a loop. Milo stays close, never straying far from Daniel's side, even within the safety of their home. Eventually, when Daniel sits down in his living room, Milo positions himself near the front door, ears perking at every distant vehicle that rumbles by. Even the faint sound of a motorcycle revving somewhere blocks away sets Milo's senses on edge, reminding Daniel that Hudson might not be done with them yet. Daniel tries to go about his routine, feeding Milo, preparing a simple dinner for himself, but the tension refuses to dissipate. Each noise from outside draws Milo's keen attention, and each time, Daniel feels his own pulse quicken. Despite the worry that tugs at Daniel, he also feels comforted by Milo's steadfast presence. The dog's unwavering vigilance is a testament to the loyalty that formed during Milo's days as a K9 and only intensified after bonding with Daniel. It's as if Milo has returned to active duty, scanning every footstep, every engine growl for signs of danger. Daniel, while anxious, is also deeply thankful that he isn't alone in facing whatever may come next. Night descends, casting shadows across the neighborhood. Daniel tries to distract himself by reading from an audiobook, hoping the narration will lull him into a sense of normalcy. Milo, however, refuses to relax. He paces the apartment, often pausing at windows to sniff at the air. The undercurrent of unease that started in the park has seeped into their home. A jarring knock rattles the front door. Milo tenses, a quiet growl emanating from deep within his chest. Daniel's nerves jolt alive. He stands behind the door, calling out to identify who is there. The voice that responds is unmistakable. Hudson. The confrontation from the park is far from over. Hudson's menacing tone creeps through the door, promising that he doesn't let things go easily. Fear grips Daniel in a suffocating hold, but he struggles to maintain composure. Milo's growl intensifies, and Daniel can sense the dog's readiness to act if anyone forces their way in. With a trembling voice, Daniel warns Hudson that he's calling the police if the harassment continues. Hudson's response is a bitter snarl, followed by a few pounding knocks that rattle Daniel's apartment door as well as his nerves. Instead of giving up, Hudson walked around Daniel's house, along with a few of his friends. Their footsteps crunch on the gravel, and their hushed voices carry just enough to stir alarm. Milo's barking grows sharper, more insistent. Daniel's hands shake as he fumbles for his phone. The adrenaline surging within him makes it hard to dial, but he manages to punch in 911. On the line, Daniel explains in halting sentences that someone is stalking outside his apartment, banging on windows and doors, and that he feels threatened. Dispatch reassures him that a patrol unit is on the way. Meanwhile, the cycle of footsteps, muttered threats, and sporadic knocks continues. It's a terrifying standoff in the darkness of the night. Daniel holds the phone like a lifeline. Milo at his side, hackles raised. Outside, Hudson's voice can be heard, slurring insults at Daniel and occasionally referencing Milo, mocking the dog's protective nature as though it were a challenge. Each passing minute seems to last an eternity, the tension only intensifying with every passing second. The usually calm hush of Daniel's neighborhood is replaced by an undercurrent of malice that seeps through every wall. Suddenly, the sound of approaching sirens breaks through the grim atmosphere like a ray of hope. Hudson's group quiets, presumably weighing whether to flee or risk a direct confrontation. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrive, their flashing lights illuminating the narrow street. They knock politely on Daniel's door, announcing themselves. Carefully, Daniel opens the door just enough for them to step into the entryway. The officers shine their flashlights around the perimeter of the apartment. Muddy footprints confirm that multiple individuals have circled the unit. They also spot cigarette butts on the doorstep and fresh scuff marks on the windowsill. Daniel, voice still shaky, recounts the incident at the park and how it escalated to this point. He provides as many details as he can recall, despite the blur of fear clouding his memory. The officers assure Daniel they will file a report and add extra patrols in the area. They advise him to keep his doors locked and not to hesitate calling 911 if Hudson returns. Milo remains by Daniel's side, eyes following the officers' every movement, ready to defend at a moment's notice. Though the immediate threat appears to have subsided with the arrival of law enforcement, Daniel and Milo remain acutely aware that tension still lingers. After the police depart, the strain within the apartment remains palpable. Milo cannot settle, pacing from one room to the other, ears perked at the faintest noise outside. Daniel tries to soothe him, running a hand along the dog's back and speaking in low, calming tones. Yet, Milo's training, honed for imminent threats, keeps him on high alert. The memory of Hudson and his accomplices prowling around the property is too fresh. Daniel attempts to latch every window and make sure the locks on his doors are secure. A wave of vulnerability washes over him. He already navigates the world in darkness, relying on Milo's steady guidance. Now he faces a human threat determined to disrupt his life further. Although the police promised increased vigilance, Daniel feels unsettled, aware that he can't simply close his eyes to the possibility of another confrontation. Gathering himself, Daniel settles on the edge of his couch, coaxing Milo to lie down beside him. He places a reassuring hand on the dog's neck, feeling the trembling energy just beneath the surface. It reminds Daniel of how formidable Milo truly is, capable of fierce defense, yet also gentle enough to guide a visually impaired person through a crowded city street. He speaks softly, reminding Milo that they have one another and that together they can face down any new crisis. Though fear still gnaws at the edges of Daniel's mind, there's a reinforcing surge of comfort in feeling Milo's steady breathing. The night stretches on, fraught with uncertainty, but also lit by the bond they share. Every squeak of the floorboards and soft hum of passing cars feels magnified in the quiet of the late hour. Yet both man and dog keep a quiet vigil, silently promising that whatever happens, they'll face it together. Two souls prepared to stand against whatever shadows might cross their path. Do you want a loyal K9 guard dog like Milo? You rate Milo 90 or 100 points absolute. Which city are you listening to the story from? Quickly comment and press the like button. Don't forget to press the channel registration button on the screen. It is a compliment. A thank you to the dog Milo K9 will accompany you in the future.